In a significant development, the United States has released 22 Iranian sailors, a move that has drawn international attention and sparked cautious optimism among observers. These sailors were formally handed over to Iranian officials at the Taftan border in Pakistan, marking a rare moment of cooperation between nations often at odds. This unusual gesture, made possible through the mediation of Pakistan, hints at the possibility of diplomatic openings, even as tensions in the region remain high and conflict continues to simmer. The sailors who made up the crew of the MV Pardis were detained after the U.S. Navy intercepted their ship in the Arabian Sea, alleging that it was transporting weapons intended for regional proxy groups, a charge that has fueled further controversy. After several weeks of intense interrogation and complex diplomatic negotiations, where Pakistan played a pivotal role behind the scenes, the United States ultimately agreed to release the crew, signaling a willingness to engage in dialogue. The transfer process was meticulously managed, with Pakistani authorities providing temporary shelter, conducting thorough medical checks, and ensuring the sailors' well-being before officially handing them over to the Iranian ambassador at the border. The event drew widespread coverage from international media outlets, highlighting a brief but meaningful moment of hope and cooperation in an otherwise escalating and volatile crisis. For the families of the sailors, the release brought an end to weeks of uncertainty and anxiety, allowing them to finally reunite with their loved ones after a harrowing ordeal. For the nations involved, this episode represents a fragile but important step toward renewed dialogue and the possibility of easing hostilities, even if only temporarily. However, the fate of the MV Pardis itself remains unresolved, as the United States continues to hold the vessel as evidence in its ongoing investigation, leaving questions about its future unanswered. Ultimately, this episode underscores Pakistan's unique and growing role as a mediator in regional disputes, and demonstrates how even small gestures of goodwill can open doors to dialogue, offering a glimmer of hope in even the most entrenched and complex conflicts. The crisis erupted suddenly in February 2026, sending shockwaves across the globe and dominating headlines everywhere. It began when the US and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iranian nuclear and military sites, aiming to cripple Iran's capabilities and send a strong message. What followed were weeks of intense and brutal fighting, with heavy casualties and widespread destruction on all sides. Cities were left in ruins, and the human cost mounted daily. Under mounting international pressure and fears of a wider regional war, a fragile ceasefire was declared in late March. However, even as diplomats negotiated, hostilities at sea continued to simmer. The U.S. Navy responded by enforcing a strict blockade, aiming to choke off Iran's vital oil exports and increase economic pressure on Tehran. In retaliation, Iran moved swiftly to close the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway that serves as a vital artery for global oil shipments, threatening energy supplies worldwide. The IRGC Navy now aggressively patrols the strait, intercepting vessels and blocking all commercial shipping, escalating the already tense standoff and raising fears of direct confrontation. The closure has triggered a global crisis, with oil prices soaring and the U.S. organizing heavily armed naval convoys. Skirmishes have erupted between U.S. and Iranian forces, further destabilizing the region. Tensions remain at a boiling point, as Iranian leaders insist the strait will only reopen if the U.S. blockade is lifted. Protests and military alerts continue daily. Both sides are locked in a dangerous stalemate, refusing to back down. Meanwhile, world leaders urgently call for a diplomatic solution, hoping to prevent the conflict from reigniting and spiraling out of control. In the midst of escalating tensions, Pakistan has emerged as a key mediator on the world stage, skillfully balancing its long-standing alliance with the United States alongside its deep-rooted ties to neighboring Iran. Early in the conflict, Islamabad took the initiative to host indirect peace talks, providing a neutral ground for dialogue. However, the gulf between U.S. and Iranian demands proved too wide to bridge in those initial meetings. Undeterred by setbacks, Pakistan continued to relay messages and proposals, working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep diplomatic channels open and active. Islamabad then drafted a comprehensive 14-point peace plan, calling for phased sanctions relief, the gradual reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and robust international monitoring to ensure compliance. While neither side has formally accepted the plan, it remains the foundation for ongoing discussions and a symbol of hope for future compromise. Pakistan's efforts have drawn criticism at home and abroad. Some question its neutrality and motives in the peace process, while Iran, wary of outside influence, increasingly looks to Oman as an alternative mediator in the region. Still, Pakistan's pivotal role in securing the release of detained sailors has reinforced its importance in the region's fragile diplomacy, highlighting its potential to shape the path toward peace. Pakistan and Iran have intensified diplomatic contacts, with leaders discussing ways to ease tensions and strengthen ties. Amid the blockade, Pakistan opened new land trade routes, providing Iran with a vital economic lifeline for essential goods. This move, while controversial, is defended by Islamabad as humanitarian and necessary to prevent regional instability. The US has voiced concerns, but Pakistan insists that economic collapse in Iran would create a refugee crisis on its border. These actions highlight Pakistan's complex balancing act, working with the US on security while supporting Iran economically. As military tensions dominate headlines, Pakistan and Iran quietly deepen cooperation out of necessity, adapting to shifting realities. The conflict has sent oil prices soaring, with the closure of Hormuz pushing crude above $150 a barrel. This spike is fueling global inflation, raising costs for families and businesses everywhere. Shipping disruptions are compounding the crisis, as vessels reroute around Africa, causing delays and shortages. The economic fallout threatens recession and highlights the world's vulnerability to regional instability. The longer the standoff continues, the greater the damage to global supply chains and economies. The crisis is a stark reminder: peace in the Gulf is vital for global prosperity. As of May 2026, a fragile ceasefire holds, but the core US-Iran conflict remains unresolved. The US demands Iran halt its nuclear ambitions. Iran wants sanctions and the blockade lifted. Pakistan's mediation and peace plan offer a glimmer of hope, but mistrust runs deep. Any miscalculation could reignite war, with devastating consequences. The world watches anxiously. Will recent goodwill gestures lead to real talks, or will the Hormuz standoff spiral out of control? For now, Pakistan's role as a bridge builder is more crucial than ever as the region teeters on